The night Serafina Voss was cast out of her own kingdom, snow fell like ash over the palace steps. She knelt in the courtyard with her wrists bound in silver-laced chains, the metal burning against her skin, stealing the strength of the wolf inside her. Hundreds of eyes watched from the palace windows. None of them met hers. Only days before, she had been the crown princess of the Crimson Moon Kingdom, heir to a throne her family had held for 3 centuries. Now she was a criminal. A visiting dignitary had died from poison hidden in his wine, and every finger in the court pointed at her. She had not done it. She had not even been in the room. But truth mattered little against the weight of a well-placed lie. Her father, the Crimson King, would not look at her as the guards dragged her forward. His jaw was tight, his eyes glassy, but he said nothing in her defense. Beside him stood her half-brother, Prince Damien, his face arranged into a mask of sorrow that did not reach his eyes. Only Serafina noticed the faint curve at the corner of his mouth, quickly hidden. "Serafina Voss," the royal herald announced, his voice echoing across the frozen courtyard. "You are stripped of your title, your birthright, and your place among the Crimson Moon Pack. You are exiled, to never return." She wanted to scream that she was innocent, that someone had set her up, that she loved this kingdom more than her own life. But the chains around her wrists were laced with enough silver to keep her wolf silent, and her voice barely above a whisper. So she said nothing. She only looked once more at the palace she had grown up in, memorizing the shape of the towers against the dark sky, before the guards forced her through the gates and into the freezing wilderness beyond. No cloak, no food, no wolf to keep her warm. Just chains, snow, and betrayal. She did not know how long she walked. Her legs gave out somewhere past the old stone bridge that marked the border between Crimson Moonland and the neutral territories. She remembered falling into snow so cold it felt like fire, and then nothing at all. When she opened her eyes again, she was warm. That confused her more than anything else that had happened that night. She lay on a bed with thick furs pulled over her, in a room lit by a low fire. The chains were gone from her wrists, though faint silver burns still marked her skin. For a moment, she thought she had died, and this was some strange afterlife. Then the door opened, and a man stepped inside who looked nothing like anyone from her father's court. He was tall, with the kind of quiet strength that did not need to be announced. His eyes were a deep, storm-colored gray, and they studied her the way a soldier studies a battlefield before deciding where to strike. She recognized the crest on his chest immediately, stitched in black thread against dark leather, the mark of the Obsidian Pack. Her stomach turned to ice. The Obsidian Pack and the Crimson Moon Kingdom had been enemies for generations, their wars fought over land, pride, and old wounds that never fully healed. If this man was who his crest suggested, then she had been dragged not to safety, but into the hands of her people's oldest rival. "You're awake," he said. His voice was low and even, giving nothing away. "Good. I have questions." "Who are you?" she managed, her throat raw. "Kaelin Thorne." He said it simply, as though the name alone should explain everything. It did. Every wolf in the northern territories knew the name of the Obsidian King, a ruler as feared for his battlefield victories as he was respected for his fairness to his own people. "And you are the Crimson Moon Princess. My patrol found half frozen in chains at our border. I want to know why." Serafina lifted her chin, even though her whole body ached with exhaustion. "I'm no longer a princess. I was exiled, convicted of poisoning a dignitary." Something flickered across Kaelin's face, there and gone so quickly she almost missed it. Chains laced with silver are used to punish traitors who might fight back with their wolf. They are not used on someone already stripped of rank and sentenced to leave. That punishment is reserved for prisoners a kingdom fears, not ones they simply want gone. He studied her carefully. Either your father feared you very much, or someone wanted to make certain you never made it out of those woods alive. Serafina said nothing, because she had wondered the very same thing since the chains first closed around her wrists. Over the following days, Kaelin kept her in the stronghold, though he made it clear she was not free to leave. Guards watched the halls near her room, and though no one treated her cruelly, she understood the message. She was valuable, whether as a hostage, a bargaining piece, or something else Kaelin had not yet decided. What surprised her most was that he did not gloat. He did not remind her that her kingdom's blood had spilled his people's blood for generations, or use her fall from grace as an opportunity for cruelty. Instead, he asked questions. Careful, precise questions about the night of the poisoning, about who had access to the dignitary's wine, about who benefited most from her disgrace. "Why does it matter to you?" she asked him one evening, as he sat across from her in the study where he had taken to questioning her, a fire crackling between them. "I'm your enemy's daughter. You could use my exile against my kingdom and gain everything you want without lifting a single blade." Kalen was quiet for a long moment, his gray eyes fixed on the fire. "Because something about this does not sit right with me. I have fought your kingdom's soldiers on more battlefields than I can count, but I have never seen your people punish traitors with border exile chains, meant to weaken a wolf slowly, rather than kill it outright. That is not mercy. That is someone wanting you to die quietly, far from witnesses, so no one could ever question the official story." His words settled into her chest like a stone. She had been so consumed by grief and shame since her exile that she had not let herself think clearly about the details. But he was right. If her father truly believed her guilty, a swift execution would have been the harsher, more expected punishment. Sending her out into the wild in weakening chains, with no cloak or supplies, was not justice. It was disposal. "You think someone wanted to be certain I never came back to defend myself," she said slowly. "I think," Kalen said, "that someone in your court benefited greatly from your absence, and I intend to find out who." She should have been wary of his help. He was, after all, the ruler of a kingdom that had shed blood alongside hers for generations. But something about the steady way he spoke, the total absence of pity or scorn in his voice, made her want to trust him, despite everything she had been raised to believe about his people. It was on the 7th night, as they sat together going over the timeline of the dignitary's death, for what felt like the 100th time, that she first noticed the warmth building in her chest whenever he was near. It was not simple gratitude. It went deeper, into something instinctual, something her wolf recognized long before her mind caught up. When their eyes met across the table, she saw the same confusion mirrored in his gaze, as though he too were fighting something neither of them had asked for. "This is not supposed to happen," he said quietly, almost to himself. "No," she agreed, "it isn't." Neither of them spoke of it again for a while, though the pull between them only grew stronger with each passing day. Kalen sent trusted spies into the Crimson Moon Court under the guise of trade negotiations, gathering whatever information they could find about the days leading up to the poisoning. Serafina, meanwhile, spent her time recovering her strength, walking the stronghold's gardens under careful watch, and slowly allowing herself to hope that the truth might someday come to light. The evidence, when it finally arrived, came in the form of a small bundle of letters smuggled out of the palace archives by one of Kalen's most trusted spies. Kalen read them first, alone in his study, his expression darkening with every page. When he finally called Serafina in to see them, his hands were steady, but his eyes carried something close to anger on her behalf. The letters were between Prince Damien and the court alchemist, discussing in careful, coded language a plan to remove Serafina from the line of succession before their father named her official heir. The poison had never been meant to kill the visiting dignitary outright. It had been designed to cause illness that could be blamed on tainted wine from Serafina's private stores, giving Damien the perfect excuse to accuse her of treason and claim the throne for himself once their father, aging and increasingly unwell, eventually stepped down or passed. Serafina read the letters twice, her hands trembling. She had always known her brother resented her, had always felt the coldness beneath his polite smiles at court gatherings, but seeing the plan laid out in his own handwriting, so calculated and cruel, cut deeper than she expected. "I'm sorry," Kalen said quietly, watching her carefully. "I know this does not undo what happened to you." "No," she agreed, setting the letters down with hands that would not stop shaking. "But it means I was right not to trust the silence in that courtyard. It means I'm not losing my mind." "You never were," Kalen said, and something in the certainty of his voice steadied her more than she expected. They did not have long to process the discovery before new, more urgent news arrived. Damien, it seemed, had grown suspicious of increased obsidian activity near the border and had accelerated his plans. Kaelin's spies reported whispers throughout the Crimson Moon court that the prince intended to move against his own father directly, staging what would appear to be a natural decline in the aging king's health, followed by a swift coronation before anyone could question the timeline or the convenient death of the one heir who might have stood in his way. There was no time to wait for slow diplomatic channels or careful political maneuvering. If Damien succeeded, he would rule a kingdom built entirely on lies, with no one left alive who knew the truth of what he had done. "We go tonight," Kaelin said, already calling for his commanders. "Your father may have exiled you, Seraphina, but he does not deserve to die at his own son's hand without ever learning the truth." Seraphina looked at him, this king who owed her family nothing, who had every reason to let her kingdom collapse under the weight of its own corruption, and simply claim whatever spoils remained. Instead, he was preparing to ride into danger to save a father who had abandoned her without a fight. "Thank you," she whispered. "Don't thank me yet," he said, though something softer passed behind his eyes. "Thank me when we make it out the other side." The ride back to the Crimson Moon capital was swift and silent, a combined force of obsidian warriors and the handful of Crimson Moon guards still loyal to Seraphina, moving through the night like shadows. They arrived just as Damien's own soldiers moved to seal the palace gates, cutting off any chance for the aging king to call for outside help. The fight that followed was brief but fierce. Kaelin's warriors held the outer gates while Seraphina, moving with a strength she had not felt since before her exile, made her way through the chaos toward the throne room, where Damien stood over their father, a blade in hand and a lie already prepared for whoever discovered the body first. "You're supposed to be dead," Damien said, his composed mask finally slipping as she stepped into the room. "I know," Seraphina said. "I'm sorry to disappoint you." The fight between them was not long, but it was everything years of buried resentment and betrayal demanded it to be. When it ended, Damien lay defeated at her feet, and their father, weak but very much alive, stared at his daughter with an expression that finally, held something like recognition of what he had done. "I should have believed you," he said quietly. "You should have," Seraphina agreed, though there was no cruelty in her voice, only exhaustion and a quiet, hard-won relief. In the days that followed, the truth of Damien's betrayal spread through the court like wildfire. Seraphina's titles were formally restored, her name cleared, before the very people who had once watched her exile in silence. Her father, humbled and aged beyond his years, offered her the throne outright, ready to step aside in favor of the daughter he had so badly failed. But Seraphina had changed in ways the court could not fully understand. She no longer wanted a throne built on the same silence and fear that had nearly cost her life. When she finally spoke to her father about her future, she made her choice clear. She would help guide the Crimson Moon Kingdom through its recovery, but her heart, and her future, belonged elsewhere now. Beside a king who had seen her in chains and chosen to look deeper. Beside Kaelin, whose steady presence had never once wavered, even when trusting her meant risking everything his own people believed about her kingdom. Their bond, forged in mistrust and tested by betrayal, became the foundation for something neither kingdom had seen in generations: peace. Where their ancestors had drawn blood across the same borders for centuries, Seraphina and Kaelin built something new, two crowns joined not by conquest, but by a truth neither of them had been willing to ignore. The girl once left to die in chains, abandoned by the very people who should have protected her, became a queen twice over, not because a title was given back to her, but because she had refused to disappear quietly into the snow, and because one king had cared enough to ask why.